16th, 2014. Before I get into this, I need to make something very clear. This is not happening right now. I'm not going to beg for advice or help because I'm beyond any of your help. I've had to give up everything in my life that had ever mattered to me. This happened more than 9 years ago, and I'm finally taking the risk to share it with the world. reason to just delete the damn email, to pretend I never saw it. But as you can probably tell, I was youthful and impulsive. I clicked the download link, and after a few seconds, the downloaded tile popped up in my downloads. I opened it, fully expecting to be password locked. I mean, from the tone of the email, wouldn't you? Unfortunately, it wasn't. Fuck. I wish it had been. After I opened it, it was bombarded with sentences so thick with scientific lingo that I had difficulty even parsing them out. I was a liberal arts major, for God's sake. There was one diagram I recognized, though, from having a friend in undergrad who majored pre-med in epidemiology. It looked like the picture, squiggly lines, and almost like a 2-year-old drew it, or maybe some kind of intertwining of worms or something. But for those of you that do not know, that's Ebola. Yeah, Ebola. I skimmed down until I finally found a paragraph that summarized what I'd been struggling to read. With the iteration of EBOB 7X and the hiring of a new personnel, we believe we have finally addressed the main desires of the client. EBOB 7X contains the following alterations from the base EBOB-0. A. Increase incubation time 12 to 40 days as opposed to EBOB-0 incubation 2 to 12 days. B. Suspended the lack of appetite common in EBOB, thus remaining one of the major diagnosable tools. C. Increased durability, the virus allowing it to remain hot for up to 8 hours outside the human body. C. Test 100 PA for applicable data. D. Decreased rate of fever increased by 20%, allowing for upwards of 35% more time before a patient becomes immobilized. I pushed my chair away from the computer and simply stared at the email for a minute. I rubbed my eyes and reread the paragraph over and over again. I couldn't believe what I was reading. What would be the point to do this? Who would want these changes to an already deadly virus? Taking a deep breath, I forced myself to relax. I wasn't an expert on anything related to Ebola, but one of my strengths had always been an ability to think outside the box and move past my own internal assumptions. I asked myself the serious question: what purpose would these changes have? What would be the goal behind it? As I asked myself that, the answer came to me quickly. It wasn't about making a vaccine or wanting to remove the danger from the virus. Someone was altering Ebola to make it less noticeable, to make it less easily diagnosable. Someone was making a version of Ebola that wouldn't burn itself out. A version of Ebola that could be a pandemic. Holy shit. Holy shit. On pure autopilot, I copied the file onto a USB stick and put it in my messenger bag I used for work. asked me now, I wouldn't be able to tell you which was which. They were both middle-aged white men, brown hair, clean-shaven, wearing dark sunglasses. You may have received an email from our company server by mistake last night, did you? Okay, I'm going to have to cut it off here. The family whose Wi-Fi I'm ripping off to have looked out of the window 4 times at my car. And now someone has a phone in their hand. I'll have to be more careful next time. I'll be back as soon as I can. Stay safe. August 16th, 2014. I'm back. I'm being careful this time. Thus, much more careful as I can be. Yes, I'm still hijacking this family's Wi-Fi to post this and browse Reddit a little, but I'm here in the middle of the day. The only one home from what I can see is the wife, the mom, and she hasn't noticed me. At least, not yet. Some of you are probably wondering why I even bother to drive 40 minutes to do this. I'm not comfortable even writing this out on my home network, let alone posting it from there. I've lived in 60 different cities since this happened, and like where I am now, I really don't want to have to move again. Anyway, when I had to cut out last time, I had just been approached by 2 men in suits. At that moment, I had never been so appreciative of my grandparents teaching me to play poker. I frowned and looked upward to the left, acting like I was trying to remember. In case you're wondering, the idea that looking up and to the left suggests telling the truth while the opposite suggests lying is a myth. Doesn't stop people from believing it, though. I told them I had gotten it, but that I had marked it as spam and deleted it. Would you mind showing us? One of them asked. He smiled and took his sunglasses off, probably in an attempt to appear more cordial. The second kept his glasses on, which made it impossible to see where he was looking. But don't ask, our bosses are guaranteed to give us all. No sunglasses set. I agreed and logged onto my university email. I pulled up the trash folder and showed them the apparently unread email. We really do appreciate this, the first man said. We've been installing new internal servers and we've been having trouble with stored addresses and queuing emails. The new system is meant to automatically find the correct email address, but it's been attaching wrong domain names to IDs that are close. They watched closely as I deleted that totally. Each of the men shook my hand. They seemed content after I deleted it. Reminded me that the email was under corporate non-disclosure and walked out. As soon as they were gone, I shut the door and collapsed into the chair at the computer. What kind of company was this? How in the world did they find me where it worked? Send in people less than 24 hours later. I looked at the USB stick in my bag, but didn't touch it. In some weird way, I worried that I had damned myself with it, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it would end up being more important than that. I finished. My workday. And headed home. The next day was Saturday. We needed to mow the lawn. Well, some of you might think, why would you mow the lawn? I can only respond by saying that one of the downsides of having land is taking care of it. We had 2 tractors so that Faye and I could mow at the same time and finish as little time as required. Before I explain what happened that that Saturday, you need to understand something. Without fail, I serviced those tractors every time after we used them, like clockwork. I cleaned the mower decks, sharpened the blades when they needed it, and double-checked the engine. I checked oil and gas after and before using them. I'm OCD, yes, but it's been more of a help than harm. Vanna each typically used the same tractor, but she had told me that her tractor had felt like it was pulling to the left instead of going straight ahead. I told her to use mine and that I would check it out. She started the tractor and began to mow our field. The tractor worked fine for 15 minutes approximately. Then the engine began sputtering and coughing. I noticed it and waved for Faye to stop. Immediately she did, shutting the tractor off and started walking towards me. Several things happened all at once. I stood up, walked to meet my wife halfway. Faye walked towards me, smiling. Out of the corner of my eyes, a dark maroon sedan slowed down as it drove past our house. The tractor exploded behind my wife into a fireball. Pieces of metal and rubber flew in every direction, and the shock wave knocked Faye forward onto the ground. The blast heated me full in the face and felt like I had dropped face first into a bonfire. I ran to her, scared shitless. Thank God she was fine. The wind had been knocked out of her. I moved her to the garage, told her to call 911, and ran back to the burning husk of my tractor with the fire extinguisher. I used the entire extinguisher, but I couldn't get the blaze to totally stop. And I couldn't get it out. The next few hours were a blur. The fire department showed up, followed by the police. The neighbors gawked from the front porches, and we were asked the same questions again and again. The cops asked if either of us had any reason to suspect foul play. God help me. I should have mentioned the meeting with the two men at work and the email, but I kept my mouth shut. What would I have said anyway? Well, officer, I received an email last night from a company making a biological weapon out of Ebola, and two men today in dark suits showed up at work to ask me about it in a vaguely threatening manner. I would have laughed at that myself had someone else said it. By the time everyone had left, we were exhausted and starving. We loaded up the puppy into my car, went to Faye's parents' place where her dad cooked on the grill, and I lectured on the importance of taking care of my tools. This thing is, I still do. There was no reason for that tractor to explode. After dinner, we went back to our home. There was a huge circle of blackened dirt and burnt grass in the field where the tractor had exploded. But otherwise, there was no sign of the circus that had filled our lives. Only a few hours earlier, my wife was exhausted and she went straight to bed. I couldn't sleep. I kept running over every check to the tractor that I had done, trying to see where I could have gone wrong. The fuel lines were not loose, no matter what my father-in-law insinuated. There had been no reason for it to explode, now properly feeling my paranoia. I needed to double-check the other major property that gave my OCD an outlet on the guns. Yes, I owned guns. I grew up around them. And they owned tools. They are only my tools, treated with the proper respect, and there is nothing inherently disrespect them and you will get killed or kill somebody else. Faye and I had a shotgun in the living room and on top of the television stand. There was a handgun in the kitchen and a holster screwed into the bottom of the cupboards behind the fluorescent light for the counter. And a revolver my wife kept on her nightstand. Lastly, I kept a mare's leg in the basement, hidden in the pantry behind rows of mason jars filled with pears and peaches. I cleaned each and every gun every Sunday, disassembling them and making sure they were in working order. As I walked through the house, checking each gun, the firing pins were missing. Let me repeat that. The firing pins were missing. From the guns I cleaned every Sunday, like clockwork, were missing. The only gun that had been tampered with was the mare's leg. That had not been tampered with was the mare's leg downstairs. The lines of dust hadn't been even disturbed, and the gun was still able to be fired without complications. See, I went back to bed. I went upstairs and I couldn't go to sleep, so I went back upstairs and sat in the living room trying to let my wife rest while I had a panic breakdown. In the span of less than 24 hours, I had learned a company was apparently making a biological Ebola weapon and had been confronted by 2 men in suits who claimed to represent said company. Had one of my tractors explode, nearly killing my wife, and had to come home to find someone had tampered with my belongings in an attempt to make me unable to defend myself. What the fuck was going on here? My first concern was for Faye. Was someone targeting both of us? Just her? Only me? It was my tractor she was on. How would I be able to protect her? I thought back over the day and remembered the maroon sedan that had been driving past when the tractor exploded. Technically, there was nothing noteworthy about the car, but an instinct told me to watch for it again. I added a gun shop to an errand list on the fridge and went to sleep, resolving to keep an eye out for the sedan. Did not help. Over the next weeks, I recognized the pattern of the 3 distinct cars following my wife and I around town. There was a black Honda, the maroon sedan, and a dark blue motorcycle. Then I would take the puppy outside. One would be inevitably driving down the road while I was outside. When we would go to the movies, one would be parked within 5 spaces of our car. I even started to notice them at family gatherings driving past when one of my cousins had a birthday party or when we visited Faye's grandmother at the nursing home. At the same time, more accidents began to occur around our home. The heat would miraculously go out, only for a repairman to say that we locked out because if it hadn't been fixed when it did, we would have had a pretty serious buildup of carbon monoxide that could kill us and the dog. My wife and my puppy, their lives were at missing pieces, and I sat in the dark to think. Deleting the information would not help. If they knew I had it, they wouldn't know I deleted it. If push came to shove, it was the only leverage I had to save my life. The email had come to me by mistake. It wouldn't be logical to assume Faye had read it. She had been on the tractor I usually used when it exploded. It was clear to me that I had been meant to be on it, not her. The accident had only started around the house since the visit by the two men, rain and fall. I hadn't seen them again in person, but the trip up, the trio of vehicles were ever present, and everly scary. A real part of me wanted to take my guns and go hunting, but this wasn't the Wild West. I wasn't going to risk someone getting shot in crossfire. I wasn't sure if the police would accept my story. If this company had the capacity to find me in less than 24 hours, how could I be sure they wouldn't fabricate evidence against me? As long as, I don't know, as long as these people were after us, I thought to myself, should I tell Faye about all this? She was my wife, my partner. I knew she'd be in my corner 100%, but I just couldn't risk her safety. Looking back, I know this sounds chauvinistic. I'm not. Faye was more talented than I was in a lot of areas. But I was raised to believe that a man protects his family no matter what. Discounting the problems with the ventilation system, everything that had happened was directed at me. If I told her, she'd become as legitimate a target as I apparently was. As long as these people kept trying to proactively silence a leak, I suppose, I would be their way of saying it. My wife was in danger of being collateral damage. Remaining that way was not an option, and I had to think of a way to ensure her safety permanently. I was out of options, at least the ones that left me in a position I wanted to be in. Namely, with my wife safe in the life we had built. The only option I had left that would keep me alive and keep my wife and family safe was one I didn't want to do. I had to disappear, vanish, out of the clear blue sky and make it as close to impossible as I could to follow my footsteps. Once I was off the grid, I could find a way to either expose the company or make some kind of deal with them. I couldn't expect Faye to follow me, nor would I want to expose her to the level of danger I was in. I would have to abandon the love of my life, every accomplishment I had earned, in order to survive this, at least temporarily. I was so screwed. Lastly, I randomly picked 4 towns off a map. I bought a prepaid cell phone, and when I should have been working, I looked up apartments for rent in those locations. I called and made appointments to look. Appointments I never intended to keep. I called water services, cable, and internet providers, magazine companies, all to set up subscriptions or knowingly false information and installation dates. But the people reading this recoil and are able to think themselves, what a jackass, you can bottle your displeasure. When a company like that comes to a place to make an installation and there isn't anyone there, they simply don't do the installation. It's no skin off their nose. The callback numbers on all those appointments, I made sure to get the number to the nearest police or federal authority station. I doubted the people who sent the email would be worried, but I fully intended to make it clear that I was meeting them step for step. For every sales plan or rewards program I belonged to, I called and changed my information slightly. I said purposefully misspelled my name or had them fix my address to one of 4 towns I had picked, or a P.O. box I had prepaid just for this. Everything was done with one reason: to make it as time-consuming as possible to hunt down every lead I could place, in order to give me time to find a way out of this mess. To make sure I didn't lose the information I had saved in the USB drive from the email, I printed everything out from it twice and sent each of copies to a different P.O. box owned by private companies. Again, this isn't a how-to, but this is an easy way to break it down. Box A, bake everything, towns I never planned on visiting. Box B, bake everything, town I never planned on visiting. Box C, reel, send 1 copy here, down adjacent to a place I was familiar with. Box D, reel, send 1 copy here, down where I planned on disappearing to start with. The whole time I had to keep Faye in the dark. Killed me to see her smiling and playing with the dog, or to hear her murmur, "I love you," as she fell asleep next to me. If I had been able, I would have rewound until just before I had opened that damn email and continued to sit here with her as long as I was able. I managed to keep my misinformation building efforts away from her, but the accidents, they kept happening. Our oven broke and the heating element didn't stop getting hotter. I had to shut the power off for the whole house in order to avert a fire. On my way to work, the stoplight glitched just as it turned green for me, staying green for the opposing lanes as well. I almost got deboned by an old man driving a mid-life crisis mobile and had to give the steering wheel extra tight to keep from yelling. One afternoon, Faye took Sigmund. We had finally named our little rescue out for a walk in the backyard. I heard her scream and ran outside with the shotgun. I didn't know what to expect, but I knew it wasn't going to be good. She was holding the puppy and shaking and pointing out to the field. Even from that distance, I could make out the timber rattle moving through the grass. She told me the puppy had noticed it before she did, and she had barely had time to yank back on the leash and move away before the snake had coiled up onto itself and began rattling. I walked out, aimed, and suddenly there was cooling snake blood all over a 5-foot circle. Even from that distance, I could make it out. So could other people, I'm sure. Faye was shaken, and I asked me if I had ever seen one before. No, I answered. Well, we are technically in the range. For one, I had never seen a snake like that in a populated area like where was ready to go without more packing as I got up. Sigmund yawned and looked up at me, his tail gently wagging. I had to bite my tongue to keep my eyes from shedding any tears as I scratched behind his ears and kissed him, trying to commit to memory his smell and the feel of face skin under my hand. I signed the divorce papers and left them on the kitchen counter. I tried to write a note to give some kind of explanation, but nothing came. At least nothing that would keep her safely ignorant of what had happened and why I had to leave. I ended up writing, "I'm sorry, I'll always love you," and left it at that. I left behind everything I loved in the last-ditch effort to keep them all safe. It was lonely and terrifying. I've been on the run since 2005, 9 years, 9 long, fucking lonely years. I never stopped moving in the first 2 years, stayed in one place for no more than 2 months before packing it up and moving on. I worked odd jobs, always got paid under the table in cash, and lied with a smile every time someone asked where I was from or about the ring I wore on my neck. I've tried 3 times over the years to get the evidence I had to people who might be able to help me. 2 were politicians and 1 was a newspaper. I suspected you'll recognize their names: Larry Gregg, Anthony Weiner, and Tim Russert. I picked the politicians not because they were tough on bioweapons or the vast military-industrial complex, but because they represented states far from my home state. When I reached out to Greg on August 23rd, his staff seemed remote but interested. 4 days after, I turned on the radio and heard that a roll call was reporting that he had been arrested for lewd conduct. Holy shit. I went underground again after that for a better part of a year, moving and always keeping an eye on over my shoulder. Yeah, it was a terrible life. I reached out to Russert next, contacting his staff and explaining that I had a story that I would only trust to Russert himself. I was a fan of Meet the Press for a number of years and always appreciated that he never seemed to play favorites. I guess in the back of my mind I daydreamed about my life turning out like something from Pelican Brief. Reuniting with Faye, seeing my parents again, my old employers offering my job back, out of pride for my accomplishments. But thinking back, seriously, it's been 9 years. My dog had probably died or was very old. Faye was probably remarried, had children. All those things ached at my heart. On June 13th, Russert died of an apparent heart attack. I cleared out my meager apartment and was on to the next Greyhound bus out of town the same day. It was easier to hide in more populated areas, and while my facility with the other language was never fantastic, I knew enough to pass by. I crossed back to the country in late 2010 and decided to attempt to go public again. I contacted junior congressmen from New York, this time when someone on the opposing side of the political aisle for my first attempt. I actually spoke with Weiner himself, and he offered me protection and his full support in exchange for the information I had. We verbally agreed, and I even traveled to New York City to meet him. We had agreed to meet in a nondescript corner restaurant, but he never showed. I waited for an hour, but nothing. My off the grid instincts were screaming, and I vanished into a dive bar. On TV, I saw the story, a sex scandal where Weiner had been having online affairs. His credibility was totally shot. I finished my beer, and I disappeared down again. I've been underground ever numerous years, I never wanted to hurt you, and everything I've done has been to keep you safe. I know you haven't sold the house yet. I lurk online using proxies and public internet access. There's a lockbox buried under the third fence post away from the road. It has the first book we ever read to each other, and a handwritten copy of our wedding vows. I had hoped to give it to you on our 30th wedding anniversary, but that isn't looking likely. Do what you want with it. I love you. August 22nd, 2014. Okay, I can't stay here long. I wanted to address a few things in a longer post, but events had happened that make that no longer an option. This is my last update in a very, very long time. It will be probably my last ever. When I woke up this morning, I turned on the radio and I realized I fucked up. I fucked up badly. The family had been skipping in and out of suffered home invasion last night. The news is reporting that team of 4 masked men stormed into their house at 3 in the morning. The invaders shot the family's dog, killing it instantly. They proceeded to torture the whole family, shooting the husband, father in the stomach, and forcing the wife and 2 kids to watch him bleed out. By the time the police were able to arrive, the invaders were gone. They murdered him and cut off 3 of the elder child's fingers. Police reports are saying the intruders are asking about a man with my description, that the family didn't know anything. All because I stole their internet and posted this. I'm waiting at a bus station now. I need to disappear again, though hopefully I can manage to do something for the family whose lives I managed to totally fuck up. I've seen a lot of your comments about going to WikiLeaks, of being a hero. Here's the thing, I've never wanted to be a hero, and you can call me a coward if you want. Honestly, all I wanted was a normal life with my wife and a dog, and 2.5 kids. I need to find a way back to that if at all possible. This isn't a video game or an action movie. I can't just walk into a building with a gun and automatically assume everyone will recognize me as the protagonist. Nor can I walk into a newspaper or TV station and have my life be fixed. I contacted WikiLeaks once to assuage my fears about what happened with Russert. In the 24 hours it took them to contact me, they were men in the town I was in at the same time already asking about me. This isn't worth my life, and that's that. I've not contacted Faye. Her new husband is old money and she seems fine. I saw some of you suspect that he is in on it somehow, but I doubt it. I'm going to find a way to slip some kind of message to her, I think. To the person who claimed to be the company and said my trip to Europe didn't do anything. If you're real, thanks for proving it did. I never went to Europe, you idiots. Facial recognition will never outplace the human element. Lastly, to the people claiming to be companies hired by my wife to indulge my paranoid delusions, I congratulate you on your imagination. That's it. I wish I could laugh it off as easily